concussion is perhaps the most unique injury the world of sports has ever seen. It is not a physical injury, but rather a brain injury, causing temporary disruption in brain activity. The scariest part is our lack of knowledge on the injury and the immense psychological and mental toll it can take on our athletes. Concussions predominantly occur in contact sports such as football, hockey, and lacrosse. However, concussions can take place in any sport. There are a lot of question marks surrounding concussions, such as, does the athlete even have a concussion? How long will the symptoms last? What is the athlete able to accomplish while experiencing concussion symptoms? And what are trainers and coaches doing to further the education on concussions and player safety? We interviewed a handful of student athletes here at St. Lawrence University in an attempt to gain insight into their personal experiences with concussions and the psychological toll that it can have. A concussion is a traumatic brain injury or type of CBI caused by a blow or jolt to the head or by a hit to the body that causes the head and brain to move rapidly back and forth. This sudden movement can cause the brain to rattle around in the skull, causing physical and chemical changes in the brain, and sometimes damaging brain cells. These chemical changes make the brain more sensitive to any increased stress or injury until it fully recovers. To get a sense of how common these traumatic brain injuries occur, we sat down with our panel of student athletes.
How many concussions have you had?
I've had 6 diagnosed concussions.
I've had 1 concussion.
I've had 5 concussions.
Around 8 to 7 concussions.
While these athletes are a select few who have had concussions, how do they compare statistically to the rest of the nation and other fellow student athletes? 1.6 to 3.8 million concussions annually in the U.S. 5 out of every 10 concussions go unreported or undetected. College athletes suffered an average of 10,500 concussions annually over the past 5 years. NCAA sports with the highest concussion rates are wrestling, 10.9, men's ice hockey, 7.9, women's ice hockey, 7.5, and football, 6.7.
When I was in a lacrosse game, the ball was on the other side of the field and the defenseman cheap shotted me from behind and just cleaned me out. I got up, I had no balance, just fell back to the ground. My coach caught me. Yeah, I got to the sidelines and went through the concussion protocol and was obviously not with it. And then later, on our way back from the game, I was trying to eat a sandwich and couldn't even find my mouth. I had no motor skills at all, which was really terrifying. And then I didn't know my name. I didn't know where I was, what I'd been doing, or what happened. So it was pretty scary.
One of the scariest ones was my sophomore year at Brown when I was completely knocked out, cold, and I got hit, but I don't remember getting hit. So it was a play where I had the puck coming into the offensive zone, and I sort of toe dragged it into the middle of the ice and was about to shoot, and then all of a sudden I ended up, my trainer looking at me, and I don't remember how I got there or anything.
During a game, just hit awkwardly and fell onto the boards and hit my head off.
It was senior year of high school. I was in a soccer game, and I got my head slammed to the back of my head was slammed, and I got whiplash and a really bad concussion from it. I had blacked out for a couple minutes, and then I remember waking up and my coach and my high school trainer were there. Most of it. I didn't remember where in the game we were or who we were playing or anything. I think I was timid to play because I think that was the first really severe concussion I got because I had mild concussions before then, and I was kind of scared for it to happen again.
While every concussion is different, there are few symptoms to help identify a concussion in the short run. While our athletes experience some of these symptoms, their experiences differ on a case-to-case basis.
Definitely light irritation. I never experienced nausea, but I also had a burning sensation in my eyes and ears. Felt foggy out of it. Very depressed, high anxiety.
Especially on Sunday when I was trying to study, I couldn't focus. I felt like I wasn't retaining information. And then Monday when I was taking my exam, I had like a consistent headache, and it wasn't like migraine, but it was constant.
Yeah, I'd say my worst concussions, I had severe headaches, kind of like this, like being like a fog type of, I don't know, I just wasn't myself at all. I remember my really bad one in college. I was nauseous and like throwing up afterwards. I would just say overall, just really out of it.
High sensitivity to light, just anything that would stimulate the brain. So like being on my phone at the time, I just couldn't do it. I just basically sat in a dark room for 2 weeks.
It was obviously constant headaches. I found I didn't sleep. Like I had a hard time sleeping in that one. Like at night I would just be up. I also felt like I couldn't eat. I was nauseous. Just like everything like bothered like me, like lightheadedness and everything, like the phones, the lights, and all that.
Though we are learning more about the physical side effects of concussions as time goes on, perhaps the most underrated aspect about having a concussion is the psychological toll it can have on the athletes, especially in regard to student athletes. The balancing of school and recovery on top of the inadvertent exclusion from social scenes can be a recipe for some dark times as a student athlete.
I was excused from school for 2.5 weeks, and then getting back. I mean, my teachers were very understanding and willing to work with me, but it was tough. And I mean, there were still like minor symptoms that were still there, and it was still hard to focus and just focusing and stimulating my brain for a long time definitely just hurt and wasn't comfortable. Lacrosse was my favorite sport. Lacrosse was the sport I was trying to play in college, and not being able to do that and not being able to participate in practices and games and just watching the season go by and being able to do nothing was extremely frustrating. And then, I mean, a concussion has no visible symptoms other than, symptoms that you feel yourself. So nobody really understands like what you're feeling or what you're going through. So it's kind of hard to be sympathetic or empathetic to something that you have no idea about. So it was tough explaining to teammates that like even though I looked fine, that I wasn't.
I would say it's a lot harder to, like, you can't control it. There's nothing, you can't go to the trainers and just heat it, and so I feel like a concussion's like, I just found like a harder injury because you just can't do anything about it. You just have to wait. I think that I just had to sit there and like for school, like I couldn't catch up. Like I couldn't catch up on the notes or even socially. Like everyone's way up doing things. I'm just sitting in bed in a dark room. So I think just missing that, just being alone for those long hours was hard. I was like really depressing. Like just sitting there because you have nothing but like your thoughts. So like going through like all the possibilities of like, well, what if this happens or like this, like just endless thoughts.
One of my concussions, I had to miss a few classes, and luckily our teachers are very understanding here, and there's emails that are sent out to all the teachers saying I have an injury, and they understand. Yes, definitely, I felt pressured. My sophomore year, I felt like my coach really wanted me to come back. He didn't understand what was going on, and I just felt like I needed to, but obviously the trainers were very good and told me not to come back. And then junior year, I felt like I really needed to come back. We had a good team, and then all my teammates didn't really understand what was going on with me. Obviously, there's no physical injury that you could see, but it's in my brain, and they were getting very upset.
Yeah, it was definitely challenging. I personally get really stressed when I miss class, and like I'm not one to skip class. So I actually didn't go to class for the rest of the week. So that was definitely challenging to try to keep up with my schoolwork while still having constant headaches. Hockey-wise, I obviously couldn't do anything, so that was frustrating. We had a big weekend coming up, 2 big weekends, Princeton, Quinnipiac, and then Boston College. So it's definitely hard, like sitting out when your team's playing well. They ended up beating Boston College, so like to feel like you're not actually a part of that. Definitely like the psychological side of dealing with a concussion, and just like everyday training. So I couldn't go to the rink I would just show up before games and have to sit in the stands. So you kind of lose touch with your friends, and the social aspect is definitely difficult. Just like a setback in general, like I hadn't worked out as hard as everyone else on my team was working out, obviously, because I couldn't. So you're just set back, and it's hard to get back into the groove of everything. But especially when they came off two huge wins against, well, one huge win against Boston College, and then yeah, that's
I
different.
don't really remember that far, but I would say one of the bad concussions I got in college, it definitely affected me. I was like dazed and confused and like had really bad headaches and couldn't really do my work well. And so I think it definitely affected me. Teammates kind of pressured me like against doing that, but I think it was like myself and my want to like contribute to the team and like be there and like have my coach like actually play me. I think that was important to me. But I think the pressure was more on myself.
In addition, due to limited season lengths and years of eligibility in college athletics, some athletes jeopardize their long-term health to be able to live their dreams of being student athletes.
I have, but with the baseline test, like they don't let me go back until I pass it. So there were a few times where I just did horribly on my baseline test intentionally, so that I didn't have to like fail my post concussion test, and so I do poorly on the baseline test, and then even if I had hit my head really hard and was experiencing like concussion-like symptoms, I was able to still pass the concussion test and recover faster. I mean, in their eyes. I definitely wanted to be back before I could, and it was extremely frustrating just watching game after game, and we'd have college coaches on our sidelines, and I just couldn't be out there and demonstrate my ability to play the sport just because I couldn't. I missed my entire sophomore season. It was one of our first games, and I missed every game until the end of the year. So that was probably a month and a half or 2 months.
Definitely. I think that I like faked not having any symptoms when I was asked in college, especially. I kind of like lied my way through a concussion, and my trainer found out later on, but it was pretty easy to lie your way through it to be able to play. A lot of us in high school took the impact test, and we did it kind of like we did it slower than we could have actually done it. So I think I returned to play earlier than I should have because I passed the concussion test, but I didn't technically pass it because we kind of all decided like we're gonna do bad on it just in case. And honestly, I don't really think it's something I've thought about especially in college sports. I think like I was like I want to play more than anything, and it didn't really occur to me that like these concussions I've had will have long-term effect on me.